to NLP Upskill Your Life. So join us again for episode 13. So today we're delighted to be joined by another great guest, Sean Flattery. It's Sean Flattery, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for joining today, Sean. I'll let Fintan a friend of yours, so I'll let him introduce you if that's okay.
Sure.
That's great. No problem at all. All right. Okay, Sean, thanks very much for coming on. Really appreciate you sparing the time to come on and talk with us. Sean, believe it or not, was one of my very first scouts, and many years ago. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, let's have a night full of scouting stories. But that's not what tonight's about. Maybe another night. That'll be another podcast. Tonight, we're going to talk about the importance of health and fitness, because Sean also happens to be a personal trainer, and not just any personal trainer, but my personal trainer. So, yeah, just a quick introduction or a quick thing about how I got into the personal training. Decided to go with Sean to become a personal trainer, and as you remember, Sean, during lockdown, a number of things happened. Obviously, we were stuck in, but I used to go for a walk every day, and down by the river. And Sean happens to live down by the river, so we used to get chatting and we talk about this and we talk about that, and we talk a lot about health and fitness. And I was playing a good bit of soccer, and then I went back to hurling and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, this year I decided that a lot of guys play hurling with, half of them were on the county panel last year. Actually 12 were on the county panel last year. So I figured that like they'd all have access to personal trainers, to fitness and conditioning coaches, all that sort of stuff. So I thought that actually that would be an advantage to me to do that. And I have to say it's something I'm really glad I did. And I have to say that I felt the benefit of it from the very beginning, as you know yourself, Sean, as I tell you all the time. So I want to say thanks very much for all the work you've done. And I suppose maybe if you want to tell us a bit about yourself in terms of how you work, when you got an interest in this, because I know you played soccer underage for Longford Town, and how you got interested in health and fitness, and what course you did, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so no, thank you, Fintan, first and foremost. Some very kind words there. So yeah, like I think I kind of got started in health and fitness because I just genuinely enjoyed it. There was no kind of, even from early on, there was no kind of like draw to do anything else. Because I remember when in teenage years that, obviously there's other draws like drinking and, going out and so forth. But I was always interested in progressing my soccer and playing football and just being out and active, really. There was so much, even from early ages, where, it was just so comfortable in terms of, I found like that it was my kind of thing in terms of just being able to express myself. And even from like an early age, say 5, 6, 7, I was always out. I was always on the green. I was always playing different sports, just being active. From there, kind of went on to my teenage years, where, as I said, it was soccer was my main priority. So I went on and played for Longford Town. I got a scholarship in AIT that I played with the senior team there, and I played up the north as well, for two and a half years. So I would have played in the Irish League up there, a pretty decent standard. So that was kind of my introductory into my own end in terms of I loved training, I loved competing, even from a very, very early age. Like the coaching aspect came in, I suppose it was kind of by accident, really. I never really envisaged that from early on, that I could actually do it as a job. Excuse me. I spent a lot of time even in transition year. I remember working part-time in a gym, and they were great. They give you kind of experience to an awful lot of cleaning at the time, but look, it was a part of the job. But from that end, it gave me sort of an insight into what like a gym looked like. And then from there, in my transition year as well, they wanted to get, you had to do a little bit of work with maybe sports teams. So I just helped out my brother's team, soccer team. And then from there, it was ironic because the lads actually liked me so much that they were like, oh yeah, Sean can help out, and the manager liked me as well. So it was kind of a thing where it was like, oh, I'll help out and I'll just join, that type of thing, and just join in. Really, I wasn't doing really much coaching. I was just playing with them, but kind of using my insight from playing like League of Ireland, underage League of Ireland, and kind of giving them that confidence. And I suppose that's where it really grew. From there, went on to do summer camps. And then I went to AIT, which is now TUS, I think, and did a 4-year degree in sports business management. And funny guys, like, education was never something that I was really particularly good at or invested in when I was when I was a teenager. I just I just wanted to play in England. I just wanted to play professional football. That was my dream. So I know it was kind of out there, but it was like no kind of short-term or long-term vision of what a career looked like if that didn't work out. Obviously it didn't. But at the same time, I was kind of like, okay, what's the next best thing? And for me, getting involved in health and fitness and coaching and training, or me having to be obviously in shape for my job, but also as well to be in a position where I've like, okay, I'm reading about the education that I was anyway, was a big draw for me. So yeah, that takes it to the present day. Anyway, from there on, finished college. Long story short, I was looking for jobs. There was nothing really standing out, and I had demand from. I just started posting on social media, just a blog. My brother helped me, and I got A. Durban, who's one of the probably one of the most successful Longford Town players of the last 10 years, who's actually gone on to Shelburne now at the moment, in Dublin, and doing great things. He was one of my first clients. I took him for free in the middle of a pitch. We just trained together, and he done pretty well. Got a before and after out of him, and also as well, he progressed on to the senior team at the time. And then from there, it was just posting on social media and also his sort of name, and he recommended people. Yeah, I suppose it led on to the job or career or business that I have today, you know.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that, Sean.
Anybody?
No,
yeah, really good story, Sean. Who was, or was anybody in particular who influenced you into becoming physical training?
Yeah, so that's a great question. In my last year in college, there was a number of different avenues that I could have gone down. So I was thinking I could actually go on and do teaching as well. That I was kind of toying with that idea, because I like coaching and there's parallels between teaching and coaching. I was thinking of many different careers within the corporate sector and also just sports partnerships, that type of thing. So there was a lot of stuff on my mind. At the same time, I was working part-time in the college gym and getting great experience in my 4th year. So I suppose anyone listening to this, like, you know, you can do degrees, but realistically, where it's going to really impact you and benefit you is the experience that you get from people that are from industry, and from being around good people that are able to support you and guide you, you know, especially in that type of thing, because it requires coaching requires a little bit of confidence in yourself to actually coach, because it's a daunting thing, right? If you're standing first time in front of a group of 15, 20 people in a, just say for a class setting, for example, when you're young or when you're just starting out, can be pretty daunting, because realistically, you don't really know what you're doing and you're just kind of winging it until you kind of get your confidence and get your feet on the ground, right? So yeah, it was really in college, my 4th year, there was a talk by a personal trainer, Phil Graham, at the time. So that was January time. I actually sent an email into the head of department on this November, December, on a whim, and just said, like, could we get him in? And lo and behold, January, he was speaking in front of all the 4th years, 3rd years, and that type of thing. And really, it was that talk was one of the influencers in my sort of decision making at that time. I was like, yes, definitely. And he's done on amazing things since in terms of personal training mentorship. But like at that time, I was like, yeah, he's dead right. He's just basically telling everyone in the room how it is straight. And if you want it, then it's there for you. So definitely Phil Graham would have been one of those. He's a Northern Irish based business mentor, personal training mentor at this moment in time, doing great things in that space. So him at that time for me was a massive influencing factor.
Yeah, that's great, Sean. Like that sounds amazing. And I was going to ask you as well, Sean. You know the way you said earlier on, like it was daunting at the start for yourself, like to to get to find your feet. How did you actually start off first? Like, did you go with it with a? And you're saying you post on social media, but how was your first experience for people listening? You know, because I suppose that's a big thing for anybody that's starting off a new thing to find your feet. So how did that start for yourself?
By making plenty of mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that it came naturally to me. I think it is something that, particularly because I get an awful lot of questions from coaches like over the last few years that have said like, how do you start to be confident in yourself to teach, or how do you start up a fitness page, or things like that? Realistically, and I know you've covered some of this on this podcast because I've listened to some of the episodes, but like it's really just trying to put yourself out there and trying to see what works, see what doesn't, see what your kind of style is, and really tailoring things from there. That's what I would say with those ones. And it's plenty of, as I said to you, plenty of practice, getting exposure as well to different demographics. So I am lucky enough, I've worked with people from work with kids from like 4 and 5 to probably the oldest I've had, probably 65, I'd say. So there's a good age range there over the last 10 years that I've kind of, work with, which has been interesting because obviously how you treat a 4 or 5-year-old and a 65-year-old and a mother of 2 kids or whatever. So there's many a different thing, so it's kind of like looking at that and kind of saying, okay, where do you think you're best suited, your personality type, understanding that it will take a little bit of patience and it will take a little bit of time to find your feet, and as well, obviously, not to compare, because again, at the same time, we're all working our own. What your chapter 10 and what my chapter 10 look completely different versus the paths and the steps we've put in place. Do you know that type of way? So yeah, that's kind of where the way I'd look at it.
Well, that's great. And during the pandemic yourself, when you were during the last 2 years, sorry, my screen's gone funny again. I just have to knock off this. I'll have to edit this. But no, during the pandemic, like how did you find you're working online, helping people through fitness? How did you find that yourself, Sean?
Yeah, so it was a challenge. I'm not going to lie. It was something that obviously none of us expected. But I was lucky enough in the essence that I put a good bit of attention on the online component of the business, even from the very, very beginning. So obviously writing articles on Facebook, posting them. I had the podcast as well set up that had a pretty good reach. So I was kind of had that in back of my mind that, if that was to originally, that was kind of my goal, maybe at the very, very beginning, not so much now because I really enjoy the in-person work, but I was thinking at the very, very beginning was to just do online and then just do that only. But I really like the in-person stuff at this moment in time. So, but at the same time, it was difficult because with COVID, obviously there wasn't as much going on, but I felt like people really needed it from a mental health point of view and also from an emotional point of view, because there was so much uncertainty out there, like with everything with the news, and it was a great kind of distraction. And my crew like really pulled through really well. When I think back about it, a lot had invested in home equipment, so that was a good thing. Where it was kind of a case of, we check in, we talk, but they were also able to train. There was kind of this kind of thing of, look, we'll make the best of the situation. So I think obviously it was difficult, but at the same time, I think people pulled through pretty well, and across the board as well. Even talking to friends and people that was going through it, because obviously it wasn't the most, perfect situation. Nobody wanted to go through a COVID pandemic,
Oh yeah, of course.
I really do like your honesty, Sean, when you said about all your failures and mistakes. And I think generally in coaching world and therapy and whatever else you come across, people go, "Oh, I've had so much success," but never talk about all the failures. I think that's quite important aspect to coaching. to acknowledge that.
100%. I think, you know, Fintan like knows me down through the years as well, but like I try to be as honest as I can. You know, if I don't know something, I don't know really, and I'll find out. But I don't know, I won't you know, BS someone. I'll be like, listen, I don't know. But at the same time, there you do go through things where it'll become that little bit more difficult. I feel like, you know, and I've struggled with these things in the past, is, you know, you look at your relationship towards failure and you kind of say to yourself, okay, you know, how long, you know, for example, how long does it take you to get over something, or how long does it take you to move past something, you know, where you're consistently thinking about the negatives or the mistakes or the failures that are, or the insecurities that you had about a situation, really. I think, you know, that's something that I've got better at over time, but at the beginning stages, obviously when you're younger, um, it can kind of be daunting, because again, in terms of my earlier careers as a personal trainer, you'll see things that you won't be experienced and you won't be prepared for. And that's something that you have to do the work yourself. That a lot of people don't really realize as well in the personal training world. Like people that take it seriously, and try to coach it seriously, they will do the hours of study outside it. Like, you know, I try my best to do 2-3 outside it, just even reading and trying to get a grasp of that, and because I feel like it's important. But you will go through things where you will make mistakes, and I think it's your sort of relationship with that that's key in terms of moving forward and progressing. Because if you have a very destructive personality type, and I have experience with this working with people down through the years, where they just, any mistake or any bad thing, they'll be the worst enemy possible. They'll just hit themselves with their own stick all the time. And realistically, I say this quite commonly as well, is like, would you speak to your best friend like that? Vast majority of cases, you're not speaking to your best friend like that. Yes, you're giving your best friend banter, but at good natured banter at certain times. But you wouldn't be destructive to the point where that person feels like that they can't do anything right. That then obviously they wouldn't be your best friend otherwise. So I think that's important to mention as well when it comes to that type of thing.
That's an excellent answer, Sean. Thanks very much for that.
No problem.
And yeah, I think Rich's point was very, not just valid, but very important, particularly for people who are looking to become coaches, but in all aspects of life. Been able to say, hold your hand up and say, I don't know the answer, and I'll go and find the answer, is the best way to get through anything in life. And we've all been there, in fairness. I know myself, this last number of years, I had my hand up and went, I just don't know. I'll ask, I'll find out who knows the answer, and I'll get that answer. And I did, and I found my way through so many things. And actually, one of the things that I ended up doing, as you know, is going to the gym, right? And I have to say, for years, I don't know, I was never a fan of the gym, to be honest with you. I loved playing football. I loved just being out, be hiking or camping or kayaking or being physically active. And I did understand the importance of building strength, building yourself, supporting your joints, all that sort of stuff, muscles support your joints and reduce injury. But I just was never a big fan of doing weights and stuff like that. And I have some weights here at home, and when I did do them, I could see the benefits immediately, but most of the time I didn't. I just wasn't a fan of that. So actually, I have to say, going to the gym now, and I suppose having you there telling me what to do, or showing me what to do, explaining what to do, and in fairness to you, you're great for that. You don't just go, okay, do this, do that, show me, and then that's it. You explain where I'm working, you explain why, you explain what it does. Like, for example, if I'm looking for explosiveness, or if I'm looking to build different areas of my body, then, and where that will help me improve my game. And in fairness, the whole summer we were working on it, and I was coming in week after week, or not even week after week, session after session, and I'd say to you, well, do you know what happened in Hurling this today or yesterday or whatever? And was able to show you and explain to you, well, this is where this happened because I was better able to do this, that, or the other, So It was absolutely amazing experience, and I have to say, I know, you know, the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less you know, the more you think you know, right? So I suppose I came in not really knowing what I needed to do, but quite quickly we established that there was lots and lots of improvements that could be made. And in fairness, there has been a lot of improvements made, but there's still a load more. And I have to say, I'm just excited about this because by the time season kicks off again next April or so, the amount of work that improvement that we can do between now and then is massive, you know, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I have to say, well, one of the things is, myself included, is there's a lot of myths and misconceptions around going to the gym. And I suppose you probably have people saying it to you, whether it's walking down the street, in the pub, or even people who turn up to the gym and they're not sure what to expect and that sort of thing. What maybe you might want to talk a little bit about that, Sean. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so like when it comes to myths and misconceptions, there's many. I think we're in a world now where social media is key. Well, it's not key, but it's a lot of people's attention and where they're spending their time. So inevitably there will be biases depending on who people follow, what type of information they're exposed to, and these type of things. But the fundamentals do remain the same in relation to, like, you know, eat good quality foods, sleep 7, 8 hours a night, exercise 3 to 5 times, whatever exercise you enjoy, keep your stress levels low. You know, things like that that are very, very obviously basic and rule of thumb, and they don't change. When you're talking about a healthy individual, that's what you would be looking at. Like, there's a lot of stuff banded around, you know, quick fix strategies, um, that are banded around, you know, just to really frustrates me because it confuses people and what people are trying to achieve. And it's sort of that the instant gratification. Unfortunately, given the honest truth, fitness isn't instant gratification. Fitness is a process that takes a number of years to get good at. And it's something that needs to be embedded in relation to somebody's lifestyle, not just something like you do to tick off a box, right? Like, that's something that I've been exposed to that the last number of years in particular is this thing notion of, oh, I'll do it when I can because it'll just, it's like it's like nearly an analogy of like comparing it to a haircut. It's like, oh yeah, sure, look, I'll come in, I'll come in and just to shorten the sides a little bit off the top. Sure, I'll be grand with that for the next while. It's like, no, look, this is super beneficial to your health, right? And it's going to make you in years to come have a better quality of life. That's how important it is. And the misconception there is people just don't value it highly enough. Like, that's a huge thing. And again, over time, then they see that very preventable illnesses, maybe not ill, but obviously, you know, preventable things can happen or can come up that people realistically shouldn't be really suffering with at certain stages of life. That's another thing, because again, if you're fit and healthy, there's an awful lot that you can, you know, manage, and you've fundamentally a better quality of life. So again, that's important to mention. I think other misconceptions and myths and all this type of thing, I've mentioned a few there in relation to quick fix, and just obviously the whole social media, you know, rabbit hole that people can kind of get into sometimes. I'm just trying to think. I think there's so many in relation to food as well. Which diet to go on is a huge one. That's where people that kind of label nutrition or food, which diet is the best for me. When realistically, when a person's trying to lose weight or decrease body fat, they need to be in a caloric deficit. So that's the principle, right? The method is, you know, you can use a lot of methods. So any one of these, obviously, dieting strategies to get you there. But realistically, what people do is they confuse the method and the principle and pick diets from absolutely anywhere, and then obviously find it very frustrating when it doesn't work for them on a number of occasions over a number of years. I think that's as well is very important to mention, because again, it can frustrate people. It can frustrate people to the point where they get very, very down and very upset about, you know, not getting the body that they want and a body that they deserve, really. So yeah, they're the few that kind of springs to mind, Fintan.
Yeah, that's great. There's a couple of things actually from that I was thinking of. One was you were talking about the caloric deficit, right? And of course, a lot of people think, oh, in order to lose weight, I have to starve myself, you know. But the problem with that then is if you're not eating enough, then suddenly you don't have the energy to do the exercise. And then it becomes torture, you know. And if you're out training and you don't have the energy, you can't run as fast, you can't run as long, all that sort of stuff. And then or you have a match or whatever it might be, or else you're in the gym, you can't lift as heavy, you can't um you can't give it 100%, and you're maybe down to 60%, and sure, that's no use to anybody. You're just wasting your time doing that. And the other one then was what was the other one I was thinking? It's coming, it's gone. Was around, oh yeah, like when I was I always thought the gym was like full of these guys, like strong men, guys lifting big massive weights, pulling Volkswagen Beetles and trucks and stuff like that, that they'd go in there to be training, and then I'd arrive in and I'd be like this, like, and they'd be looking at you going, oh, what are you like, but of course it's nothing like that at all. There's all sorts of people, all shapes and all sizes, and everyone just minds their own business. Yeah, people say hello and they're friendly and all of that sort of thing. But there's none of this looking at people going, oh, look at them,
Yeah.
Everyone is there because I think everybody started off probably for the same reason, that they just wanted to improve their health and fitness,
See, and there's a number of points that you mentioned is very, very true. Like the gym is for everybody, exercise is for everybody, no matter what age you are, you can still get into very good condition and you can still be very happy in your body. It's not a kind of I think sometimes it can be excused at times. It's like, oh, I'll leave it, I'm too old for this or whatever. That's just really, it's a form of procrastination because realistically they know what they need to do, and it's the gym is for everybody, no matter what level you're at, no matter what ability, body size, it's for everybody. And that's something that I think people kind of can find difficult to get into their heads. And like, yes, obviously it can be daunting going into something you're unsure of. It'd be like me going into, I don't know, a dancing class or something. I if you were to put the shoe on the other foot, because realistically I'm not I'm not a best dancer. I'm a good dancer maybe after 2 o'clock in the morning, but
like us all, yeah.
but even that's questionable. But at the same time, I think at the same time, I think people have to look at it from that perspective, because there's you guys there have talents that I don't have and vice versa. And I think really, because again, I was at a talk about confidence there a couple of weeks ago. It was really good talking to Helix, but it's really trying to, if you want to do something, think about the next step rather than the next 10 steps. So what's the most, break the task into its simplest form. So I think that's a kind of good tip for people, because it's like if you don't have that initial confidence, or you find that you're a bit anxious in that sort of situation, think about, right, what's the very next step I can do to make myself not go, but make myself to be a healthier person. So if that's like drinking a liter of water extra, or going from 5,000 steps to 6,000 steps and doing that consistently, you're winning. You're winning before you've even started in a lot of cases, because that's realistically us as humans. I was reading a bit about this. We find it very, very difficult to go from 0 to 1 versus 2 to 10. Right, the 0 to 1 is the most difficult bit for us to do in relation to habits. 2 to 10, you're flying, and I see this on a regular basis with people that start, that find it very overwhelming and find it very frustrating, very anxious, very, they just don't know where they're at, and that's completely fine, and that's my job to be able to guide them. But at the same time, when I see them going from that 2 to 10 mark like the world's people's oyster. They can go wherever they want, and to be honest with you, that's a really satisfying people when I do see that.
That's a brilliant point, Sean. Yeah.
2 questions for you, Sean. What is the myth about ladies bulking up when they're lifting weights? And for men, how do we increase testosterone without additional supplements?
Good question. So when it comes to ladies first, okay, so ladies don't have the same amount of testosterone obviously as men. So that's a myth, because of the fact that they can't bulk up. It makes it very hard unless they're taking like performance enhancing supplements and injecting testosterone or things like that. They won't just bulk up. And as well as that, if they're having, if depends on obviously their calories and what they're eating, but at the same time it comes back to understanding that obviously they won't bulk up in terms of look like a man, because again, that's something that you see, and that's something like, that's the thing, oh, I don't want to get too bulky around my shoulders, is a common one that I get, because of the fact that they kind of look at that and say, okay, if I look too manly, it's not a good look for me, and that's completely fine. But it takes a lot of time to do that, and those type of things, in terms of, you know, they'd have to be taking extra bits, and also the fact that they'd have to be eating a hell of a lot of food for that to be even a possibility, and they'd have to be training for a number of years with that. And sorry, the second question
was, how can men increase their testosterone naturally?
Yeah, so good quality sleep, lowered stress levels, exercise, regular exercise, strength training, all those have massive benefits there. And obviously eating good quality foods as well. Very, very simple things, but they can help loads in that area.
That's great advice. Like one thing I was thinking there when you were talking there, Sean, as a runner myself, I think anybody getting interested in running, it's something you can do for life, isn't it? Like where,
Sure.
Yeah, like people can do in their into their 70s, like if they like to keep them well and healthy. What's your thoughts on that?
Running is a fantastic form of exercise. It really is. And it's something that from a cardiovascular standpoint is incredibly good for beneficial for health, obviously to keep you fitter, and obviously keep that all in a good working order. It's something that, yes, it does take its toll on the body on a number of years. That's one of the things I would say. But again, it depends on the training. You know, I was only talking to my granddad there a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about a guy that he used to know from years ago that was an amazing runner, that's finding his hips and his knees are at him and all this type of thing. But realistically, that was maybe 40 years ago, 50 years ago. The amount of, you know, knowledge we have now, and again, that's another thing to know, the amount of knowledge that we have now about these things versus that we had back then is come on, so much. But again, as long as you're periodizing it right, and as long as you're combining strength training with that as well, and obviously getting out of sleep, recovery, eating right, doing the basic things, and as well as that, I would encourage a bit of soft tissue work as well every now and again, just to keep everything loose, that you're keeping everything loose and not having things tighten up and having any little muscle strains, and doing training that makes sense for you and your lifestyle, you know, where you're at the moment. Something that I've seen over the years is people try and introduce themselves to running, and they'll go, okay, they want to run a 5K, and they haven't run a 5K in maybe 10 years, and they go straight to the 5K, and then they're sore for about for 7, 8, 9, 10 days after, to a point at which they're really sore and they could potentially injure themselves. Building things up over a period of time when it comes to running. I'm not a running coach per se, but I've done a good bit of reading on it and talked to people in that space. Building things up over time is key, just like the gym. It's so vital. But for people and their health and what they're trying to do, yes, 100%. As long as obviously you periodize it right, you know, do things that make sense, have good running shoes, things like that. Very, very simple things. You know, and particularly, as I said to you, if you're maybe thinking about running marathons or things like that, you know, there's really good running coaches in Ireland that are very, very good at organizing these things. I've had a few clients over the years that have, more than a few that have participated in kind of like triathlons, and also you know, basic 5Ks, 10Ks, they want to work themselves up to them and improve run times and things like that. What we've kind of noticed is one girl, she's done really well. She runs half marathons, and she's great. She's a dentist, and what she does is she's a heavy load in terms of work during the week and trainee dentists and stuff. And I think really it's been a case of managing the load of the gym as well. So, for example, if she has a couple of longer runs, or if she has her, just say, for example, her half marathon, she's done quite a few over the years. I've had her she's worked for me for about 3 years maybe, but she's done quite a few over the years. But it's about recovery as well after. So even some myofascial release work, understanding some mobility and stretching, some rest as well, is really, really key when it comes to that. But no, I'm not against things like that. To be honest, guys, I think it's a case now of picking what you like and what you enjoy when it comes to exercise. And I said that at the beginning, because some people will gravitate to strength training and they'll absolutely love it. Some people will not, and that's just the way of the world. It's like, you know, people's choices out there are great, and it's great that people have so many choices to have the right fit for what they want. Do you know what I mean? Some people love one-to-one training, some people hate it, some people love classes and what classes brings. You know what I mean? So it's a massive. Some people love CrossFit, some people love powerlifting, some people love running, some people love playing football on the weekend, training for football. So there's whole different dynamics when it comes to sport exercise. But it fundamentally comes back to one of the main things in this country. We have a growing crisis when it comes to obesity and people being overweight. I think, again, I could be wrong, but it's up in the 70% mark, 60% mark. It was, when I was in college, that was down to 40%. So it just shows you how much that's come up the last number of years. And this isn't to scare people, but at the same time, you know, investing in exercise, doing a little bit each week, goes a long, long way to a person being healthier, but also, from my own experience too, being a happier state of mind as well.
Yeah. No, it sounds terrific, the work you do, Sean. Like, fair play to you. And I just want to ask you as well, because you were saying you do a podcast as well.
Yeah.
I'd like you to mention the name of the podcast, but just one question for you as well. I like the idea of, when you put that podcast together, did you think of what you were doing, like, for the podcast, like to kind of get yourself out there as a sports coach? Was that the thinking behind it?
Yeah, so it's a kind of funny thing. So myself and my brother, it's actually still up, but we did the first episode, and guys, it was a disaster. It was an absolute, you can relate to this, but anyone that knows, that tries to put yourself out there and kind of talk and write and put posts up, it's no more than what you're doing here, but it's no more than the gym. It's anything. It's getting better at the skill, right, over time.
Yeah.
But I remember it's kind of funny story. I remember sitting in my parents' sitting room at the time, and we had the mic, which I have here in front of me, and we had like the iMac, their computer that we'd set up the laptop, and we had different questions. So we had a number of questions, and we weren't sure on the style. And anyway, we hit play, and I went to talk, and then I kept messing up. Stop, reset, and again. It was sort of like, you know, that episode of Father 10 where they're like with the guitar and
My lovely horse.
you know, and it was that bad. It was getting that bad, to a point where I honestly thought I was like, I'm going to throw in the towel. And my brother Liam, he had the patience of the same, but after that he was like, no. But he ended up being on the second one. But it was, yeah, look, to be honest, I'd never really kind of thought about kind of what the future was with it, to be honest with you. Not like yourselves. You really seem to have that vision, which is great. Now, I've kind of gotten that over time. But I wanted to kind of test myself, because I was like, when I was younger, I was very shy, very introverted, and kind of speaking up was like, okay, this could be a bit of a challenge, but something that I know that will be beneficial to me, if I want to do this as a living. And that was coming back to that question, where it's like, right, if you seriously want to do this a living, people to take you seriously, then you're going to have you have to level up here really, and kind of try your best to do something that's supportive to people and for people to listen to. So that was kind of my motive behind it. And then I was like, okay, what will make things easier for me? So I was like, right, instead of speaking with my brother, speaking by myself, which I'm poor at this moment in time, was like, okay, I'll get some guests on who are pretty good speakers. At that time, I was lucky enough to network when I first started out, say, getting in self-employed, my own business. I was lucky enough because my brother, from his job, is a videographer and photographer. So he naturally shoots for he could shoot for anyone in relation to like marketing or that type of thing. So he's pretty good at what he does. But at that time, we were networking with some good names in the industry. So I reached out to a few, asked, just said, would they be interested? And a few of them came on, which was great. So again, they were all really good. I kind of use a format of, I just ask questions. I didn't really come into the conversation that much in the early stages, because purely I didn't have the confidence in myself to do it, or probably the knowledge either at those guys. So started there anyway, built it up, did it sporadically over the last years. I'm not gonna lie, I wish I've done more, but I plan to really kind of kick that off and kind of keep the head down with it. Because I got I just was notified there by email there a couple of weeks ago, was it a few weeks ago, maybe 6-7 weeks ago. Just got an email and said it was in the top, it was 49 in the top 50.
Wow, that's
so there definitely worth doing. It's just, and I know you guys will probably find this as well, but it's a time thing. It's not my full-time job to create content. And to put content together and podcasts together, although it's great and I love it, it's it always is that thing of trying to find the time, as well as that with guests, just to be able to find time slots that suit them and suit myself and those type of things. But when I do them, and like this great conversation tonight, I really enjoy it, and they're really beneficial because of the fact that people get an insight into what you're about and what your hopes are. And again, I think at that stage as well, around Longford too, I don't think there was many people doing one as well. So again, that kind of helped me early on. But yeah, I think when it relates to things like that, I've never had the issue where I've really cared what people think either. I just do what feels right to me. And that's an important thing as well, because that can stop an awful lot of people from doing things in relation to putting out content.
Yeah.
But I think, again, it comes back to the means behind it. If it's good and it's helpful, then people are in my experience, people are very, very supportive of it.
Very
Yeah,
much
no.
so. I was going to ask you, Sean, if you have a class or if you have lessons, say 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's absolutely hammering down, how do you manage to keep yourself motivated to get up when it's pissing down at 4 o'clock in the morning to go, I've got to go out and do this?
Yeah, like, you know what? I'm going to be honest. Sometimes you don't feel like that. But at the same time, you see the value in it, and the value in it is doing something that, like, you're kind of thinking to yourself, it for that person, or for my own training too. When I don't feel like doing it, you see the value behind it. Like the initial feeling of, it's like beating the feeling, right? It's like, you don't feel like doing an awful lot of things at this moment in time, but yet you do them because you see the benefit of it behind it. And that's a big thing in terms of kind of my motivation, to be able to do that and to be able to teach it and see the beneficial side of it. For me, it's like when I see people do well, it's a great uplifting feeling. But at the same time, it's something that, like, a lot of people, they won't understand it unless they're actually in it, and I can physically kind of see that. So again, that's where a lot of that sort of, I don't like the word motivation that much, but that's where a lot of that comes. Because again, when you run your own thing, it's kind of it's the one-man show type of thing. It's like, you're in charge of a set amount of people. You have to be able to, communicate at different levels, different ability levels, sometimes different, just different levels, right? And that's a big thing in relation to, like, other personal trainers as well, to find the same struggle, to find the same challenges. But for myself, that's kind of over the last number of years, kind of what now, 4 years, over 4.5 years now going. by myself, and then the 5 years when I kind of like really kind of starting delving into kind of going into things. It's definitely been a lot of ups and downs, not ups and downs, but like it's been a learning curve, and a lot of things that have been thrown at me that I've kind of like had to deal with. But at the same time, a lot of the motivation for getting up early and kind of the long days kind of comes from there. It's kind of like you see the value behind this, like, right, listen, that's Mary, John, who's come from there, that's worked from here, that realistically they really enjoy this. And as well as that, a lot of the time, and I get the feedback as well over the years, it's what a lot of people really enjoy in their week is a session. So I have to try and perform as best I can within that too, and provide a certain amount of energy. So I can't go into it nearly half asleep, right? I'm a big believer in trying to, anything that I do, that I'll put my whole effort into. And yeah, that's kind of where the motivation comes from. Really, it's seeing the value behind things that you might necessarily see at the time. But seeing behind that and kind of just doing it, it builds up that sort of discipline to be able to just kind of continually building things on top of that. You know what I mean? Especially, and I'm not just saying this as well, especially when I work, obviously Fintan is amazing. He takes things on well, and he works with me very well. And I'm lucky enough at this point in time to have people of that similar understanding. And that's obviously it's an enjoyable experience because both parties are pulling together. It's not like I'm up here and the other person is, below me, and it's always a constant struggle there before we even do anything. Do you get me? So I'm lucky enough in that sense. As my career has evolved, that's kind of where it's been heading, which is great. It's something that I do deeply enjoy.
Excellent. Do you have a routine as well? So if you know you're going to be up at, say, 4 in the morning, do you prep the night before, or how does it work for yourself?
Yeah, so great question. What I do is normally my day normally I'm up at 6. My first one is 7. So I could have maybe a block in that morning, and then maybe afternoon I'll do my bits and pieces, whatever I have to do. I'll do some online work. And also then obviously back in the evening time, it depends on the evening. Sometimes I could have free evening, most of the time I'm in. Just depends on kind of what schedules are like and stuff. Like, in terms of prep, yeah. So my sort of prep, obviously I train as well, and I love training. So again, that's a high priority in the week as well. So I have a couple of things in the week that are really important to me, obviously, and that I have to kind of prep for in a way that I have to kind of meet, if you get me. So obviously food is important. So again, I'll kind of get that done on a Monday, and that's important. So I'll have that sort of meals per the week, so I kind of know what I'm eating and where I'm around in terms of my food and having everything prepared. Obviously another big thing is, and you mightn't even expect this, but it's actually chill time. So downtime, what I'm doing in my downtime. So my fun, right? That's a big thing that I see with sort of busy professionals, working professionals, is they don't schedule fun activities in for themselves. Right. And I've been, this is a big struggle for me, and has been the last number of years, is trying to find this back at balance. But I kind of do it on a Monday, and I kind of do it as well periodically. So even not, but over sort of a monthly basis, I'll be like, right, what do I want to try and do from a fun aspect in terms of, my friends, what social things I need to, what I like to do. Is there anything, and just have these small things. It could be coffee with someone, or it could be going to a match with someone, or it could be just a bit of time for myself, just playing PlayStation, watching Netflix. So I'll make sure I do that and my meals and have that all sorted. And then obviously take care of what I have to take care of in terms of, obviously meeting family and stuff like that is important, but preparing those things that are important to me and anyone that's listening to, important to themselves at that kind of Monday, Sunday night is a vital thing, in my opinion, because it sets you up for the challenges you get throughout the week that are kind of not as important, so that you can kind of be brave enough to say, okay, no, I don't want to do that, or it's not of the highest priority at this moment in time, and then do the things that essentially that support where you need to be, really. That's my belief, and there's the things that I prepare at the start of the week. In relation to how I do that, I'm a big believer in whiteboards. I actually have one here behind me. So they're just important for me personally, for just even writing things down, remembering to tick things off, habits, etc. And I'll use my, obviously, my diary as well. I like writing things down. I know people use from a planning and preparing sort of thing, Google Calendar, and there's many different tools out there that people can use. But I'm personally a person, I like writing things down and seeing things visually. So they're very, very handy and keeps me kind of accountable to things that I need to get done, from say client stuff to my own personal stuff as well. Because it's vital. I think there's a saying, you can't serve from an empty vessel, and I try my best to work very, very hard, and I like working hard. I really do. But at the same time, it's having the balance to be able to switch off when you need to switch off. Do you know what I mean? And that's an important thing in relation to, like, when people are kind of trying to fit in the gym and fit in their health and fitness. It's like not feeling guilty for taking an hour, 2 or 3 a week for themselves to train. That's a common thing. People do feel guilty, and they find it very, very difficult to find that time. You know what I mean? But again, as I said, it goes back to saying you can't serve from an empty vessel. So again, if you're given all the time, you're not going to get anything back for yourself. So over time, that can be difficult for people to accept, and also to manage, because again, they let things slip, and then it's like it can sometimes, as I said, it can go down to such a point where it gets more difficult to come back up, maybe in their own heads more so, but it feels like it's more difficult versus if they just kind of maybe plan things out a bit more and prioritize those things, then things can be managed pretty well in my experience.
That's a brilliant point. Yeah, absolutely brilliant point. Because I love what you say about writing things down, because I always go with that myself, which is a great thing, for anybody that's listening. So thanks so much for that, Sean.
No problem.
And an NLP perspective, a question I was just thinking of there, the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic. Fintan was mentioning you find that very important in what you do as well. Would you mind that explaining a little bit to people, please?
Yeah. So, like, when it comes to teaching different skills, obviously people will learn differently, right? So again, people will be obviously better. Some people will be very good in relation to, if I was to explain something to them, they'd take that on board. Some people will be very, very good from a listening point of view. So they'd obviously just take a time to process it, listen to it. And some people are very, very good at actually learning by just doing. So again, there's that elements as well that I have to consider when it comes to teaching and trying to get my point across. And that's important because we all have different styles of learning. And I think when it comes to the gym, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to food, whatever it is, conversations, even taking on board points, people learn. Obviously, some people are very, very quick. They'll get it straight away. Some people need that consistent, that consistent talk in their ear. And that's fine. That's fine. I know myself personally, I'm not the quickest of learners. I'll take a little bit of time, but I've learned over the years that can be quite beneficial because I'm not kind of like jumping into things, and I'm taking time to process what I can actually learn and what works best for me. And again, it goes back to that really point in relation to like personal development, what you guys are doing, learning, teaching. Like, it has to become from a point of obviously what works best for the person, because I know for myself, school, I wasn't the best at school because maybe even it was because of the teaching style, not the teachers. Teachers are great, but I'm saying the actual learning style of me absorbing information. Maybe I wasn't the best there, where college is more you think for yourself, and I found that I was more mature at that stage, and I kind of had an understanding. Maybe that was another part of it, but at the same time, I could see the kind of benefits and differences within me, too. So I guess that's a massive point on that. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
I was thinking, I know when I'm working with you that the first thing you do obviously is you explain to me what muscles we're going to be activating or working with. And then you explain how it works, and then you show me, you demonstrate it. But I find then, so I do as best I can, but obviously I don't necessarily get it right first time round. But I do know that when I know what it feels like, right, that I know it feels right.
Yeah.
And I know at that point then yes, my form is good, and you're always giving feedback, then I'd say to you, as my form, or you'll say to me, well, you need to do a bit more this way or a bit more that way, or up a bit more, down a bit more, whatever it is. And then I know when I'm getting it right, what it feels like. Because that was my primary thing. What you said there about learning more slowly, I think what you're really doing is learning more thoroughly. Because I know myself, I've been a trainer myself in work and in all sorts of fields. Like, and the one thing I notice is there's some people, and you tell them once, and they go, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's right, I know that now." And you're going, "Yeah, do you really know that now?" You know, and they might be able to explain it back to you, and you still go, "Well, would you be able to do it now if it came up?" You know, sort of way. And it's only, I find that using all, regardless of whatever someone's primary sensory mode is, or modality is, that using them all is probably the best. And then you find that it clicks that little bit better, you know.
Yeah, of course. Like, I'll give you an example of that. Like, I remember when I was learning to drive. This is kind of a side tangent, but like, I remember my dad bringing me out and trying to teach me, and like, I was, I was very, very slow to pick that up, very, very slow. But again, it's a skill that obviously I can drive now and I have a license, and again, it's served me well. But sometimes it's okay to be a little bit slow to get, as you were saying, to get the maximum impact of it and get it well and done well. And again, I suppose the expectation with an awful lot of things now is to get it quickly, click, click, click all the time. But a lot of the time it's just not practical with people, because people have different sort of backgrounds, people have different sort of previous experiences too. That's another thing. Like, for example, if you're trying to learn something and you know your manager from under 8s to under 18s was shouting abuse and you, effing you, blinding you, which with every single mistake that you made, like realistically, your confidence levels going into learning a new skill, no matter if that person is an amazing person and a great teacher, you're going to still have a preconceived notion of what teaching and coaching look like from when you were younger. So again, from my perspective, that's the thing that I try and consider when, say, a new person starts, is like what they've been pre-exposed to before, and how, you know, how good or maybe how bad that experience was for them, and try and find that ground, because that in itself will impact someone's learning abilities and their ability to take on information. Because some people think, oh, he's just going to shout at me and be like a military style, you know.
Yeah.
And this is unfortunately the truth, because it's, or a teacher in school, because I've had many teachers, you know, not great teachers, but like they just shout at you all day and make you write lines. I mean, how the hell are you meant to think for yourself or make feel confident enough to believe in yourself then? Do you know what I mean? So again, like, I think that's a massive thing when it comes to learning, is understanding that, and also, as I said to you, putting one foot in front of the other rather than trying to sprint down and get to the finish line straight away. Because sometimes getting to the finish line straight away with a skill or something isn't the best thing, because I've seen it over the years. It's like, I've seen people who have been amazing. They can get things first time, no problem, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you see the others that take a little bit of time, and you look at both and you say, right, who's thinking about it more? Who's actually thinking about what they're doing more? And again, I look from a lot of experiences, the people that are taking their time and learning and giving themselves a chance to learn is an awful lot more beneficial. You know, and that's where I try my best to be as patient as possible and try to give that comfort in the situation if I can as well. Even remember working with teams and stuff in the past with younger teams and stuff, and trying my best to do that as well, where the natural inclination is from a coach is to roar at someone, or to be not aggressive, but to be forceful and to try and, why aren't you getting it, rather than actually saying, okay, look, you're doing this really well. The kind of sandwich effect, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, a positive piece, yeah, Finton's not, but a positive piece of information, positive piece of feedback, followed by kind of a constructive, what you could have done better piece of feedback, and then an ending piece of feedback of a positive piece, a reconfirming piece that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So psychologically, you're going to end and you're going to think of, okay, I'm doing the right thing here. But yeah, I have to work on that. So there's an overall more positive perception of what I'm doing. Therefore, it'll fuel that sort of bias in your head to say, okay, I'm actually doing okay here. which is a lot of the time that's vitally important when it comes to coaching, when it comes to trying to teach someone a new skill, is very, very important. And yeah, you're not going to get it right all the time. I haven't, but at the same time, no one will. It's kind of like you have to always try your best and kind of refine that process. Does that make sense?
That's perfect. Yeah. Thanks very much, Sean.
No worries.
Right. I think we'll probably wrap it up there for this evening. I just noticed we're on about the hour mark now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Good chat.
Yeah.
Great
Thanks
chat.
very
Really
much,
enjoyed it.
Sean.
Thanks so much, Sean. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to come back on again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love that. I absolutely love that.
And what's the name of your podcast, Sean, for people that are listening?
So my podcast is just my name. So the Sean Flattery podcast. It's on Spotify, iTunes, and all good Anchor, Amazon Prime, or not Prime, the Amazon
Music
podcast. Yeah, Amazon Music. I have a website too, so it's seanflannerypt.com. So that's where all my kind of client work is, and contact information is as well. And then my social medias then are just my name and again PT after them. So it's Sean Flattery Personal Training on Instagram, on Facebook as well. And just my emails are linked to those as well for anyone that wants to kind of get in contact. But yeah, that's where you can find me in the moment. So no, I'd just like to thank you guys as well for having me on. I really enjoyed that chat, and again, it's great to see the kind of work you've been doing, because again, I've listened to some of the episodes as well, and they sound really, really great. And again, it's even it's even a simple conversation like this that can really help someone with something. I remember even listening to podcasts years ago, and again, it's just sometimes it's just puts an idea in someone's head to be like, okay, listen, this is for me, or that's a little bit of information is helpful at this moment in time. So well done.
Cheers.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
if you want to send on the links there to your website as well, so you can put them in the show notes for people to find as well, it'd be great.
Fantastic. I will, of course. Of course. So no, thank you very, very much for having me on. It was an absolute privilege, and potentially I'd love to come on again.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway, Sean, is that people should do what they enjoy doing most and not feel forced into doing something that they don't enjoy doing.
Sure. It's massive, guys, because it's something that everyone can do. You don't need a skill level to start walking. A couple of times a week. Yeah, exactly. You don't need a skill. And the amazing thing about it, I'm sure you've read some of Tony Robbins and stuff, but like the personal development speaker, but again, he talks an awful about changing states. And again, like I know myself, when you're in a bad mood or you're not 100% there, and like you go for a walk, do a bit of exercise. Even what I did today it's a little bit more extreme, but just a sea dip, jumping in the sea for kind of 5-10 minutes, or a bit of running or training or out kicking a ball or whatever that is. You just come back and it's an automatic win. It's an automatic victory. You know what I mean? So again, I think that's something that people just massively overlook when it comes to their physical and mental health.
Absolutely. And of course, we have a podcast done on ego states and helping you to manage your states. Which actually, just to hark back to something you said earlier, I think that was one of our first podcasts, and we actually re-recorded the whole lot. We weren't happy with the first version of it, so we re-recorded, and actually we were delighted then, and it was probably one of the best decisions we made.
Brilliant. That's the thing. It's a refinement process, and it's the fun of it, because as I said in the episode, like with these type of things, when you start them, when you get a few episodes in, you've won before you've even started, because again, it's that fear of doing it, speaking, putting them together, putting them out there. And then, as I said to you, it comes from that effect of the hardest part with any habit is going from 0 to 1. The 2 to 10 bit is very, very, the 2 to 10 bit is not that hard. It's the first 0 to 1 effect with anything that you do. So breaking it down into its simplest form, for you guys, it could, for me, it's just 10, whatever it is, 20-minute episode or something, speaking about something that you're really, really good at, and then obviously expanding from there if you really want to do it. It's for you, and that goes with anything, I think. When it comes to obviously the gym or education or, you know, whatever that is, you know what I mean, that you want to kind of improve. So yeah, I think we touched on a good few bits and pieces of that today.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Sean. All right.
Yeah, cheers.
Take it easy, and I'll see you on Tuesday.
Pleasure, guys. Thanks a million. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you.
Thanks.
Today with Sean Flattery on the podcast NLP Upskill Life. Really great content there from Sean, talking all about his as a sports coach was brilliant, wasn't it, lads?
Fantastic. A lot of very useful information for a whole host of topics.
Yeah, really, very good, I have to say. And sure, I think we could have kept going for another hour, but
we'd hope to get back on again. Thanks for that, Fintan, for introducing us to Sean.
Thanks, Sean, for coming on as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Yeah, big thanks, Sean. Yeah, so this is episode 13 of the podcast, and we're going to do. I think Fintan has a scale on lay for us.
Right, but today's story. Sorry, Rich, what was that?
No, carry on. Yes.
Okay, today's story anyway. Basically, anyway, today there was I was over in the Mall, which is the local park, and it runs by the river, or the river runs by the park, and the Scouts Den is over there. So what happened was I had lent some benches out to the swimming club because they were having a gala in the swimming pool, which is beside the den, which is in the park. And so they were just dropping the back over. So I went around, but they were kind of a bit later finishing than they'd expected, which was fine. I was happy enough with that. So I decided to go for the walk, did the full walk of the Mall. Now, the thing about it is, as I mentioned, it was beside the river. And one of the things we always have to watch out for in the winter is the river rising, because the den is very close to the river, and it kind of more or less it floods basically in the winter. So we have to watch the level of the river, and sometimes we have to sandbag it. So anyway, as I was walking around, I decided to there's the far side of the swimming pool is kind of higher ground, and then the nearer side beside the river is lower ground. So I was kind of took the high road anyway, and walked along, and I came to the end of the Mall. And normally there's kind of a loop there that I do, which is really, really nice. Some nice old trees there and that sort of thing. So I like to go in there, but it was blocked off. There was tape around it. And the reason there was tape around it was because the river had flooded and had covered the path on the lower part. So I looked and I checked, and everyone was going around. They were bypassing this blocked off part. I just felt that it didn't look too deep to me, and I had my boots on. So I decided I'd take a chance. So I went around anyway under the tape and followed around, and it was really nice. The moon was out, and you could see it in the river, and it was just, the river was in full flow. And it was just a really, really nice experience, something that I had hoped to experience. And I went down anyway, and I managed to wade through the water, which wasn't too deep. And as I said, I had my boots on, so I was grand. And I came out where it was blocked off and continued my walk.
Very good. Let that sink in now. Great stuff. Okay, so we'll finish off. Rich, I think you have a question lay.
Aye, well, yeah. So, going back to what Sean was saying is, you may have a idea of where your 10 is, but you're currently at 0. How do you get from your 0 to your 1, and then cruise yourself all the way from 2 to 10?
Brilliant, lads. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Rich, and thanks, Fintan.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Fintan.
Great stuff. So once again, thanks a million, everyone, for tuning in to today's podcast, NLP Upskill Life, episode 13. So tune in next time. We'll have another podcast, episode 14. So once again, if you do want us to talk about anything on the podcast, or if you have any comments, and if you're enjoying stuff, you might send us an email at NLP Upskiller Life and we'd be happy to discuss that on the podcast, or else put a comment on our Facebook group, and that would be brilliant. Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Cool.
Thanks very much.
And you can also find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, and yeah, I
Anchor.
think that's it. Anchor.
Yeah. Excellent.
So,
I see you next time.
enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.